Hey, welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and listeners out there. If it's Tuesday, which I'm pretty sure it is, we are talking real estate. I'm Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company and managing partner of Saywitz Properties. We're back here again. It's 2026. We are talking real estate, trying to figure it out, trying to learn something. Probably going to make something else up along the way as well. And so today's show a little bit different. We're going to do a little discussion as opposed to having an outside third-party guest in on the future of investing in real estate.
My chance to turn the tables on you and to take a look at 30-plus year career, however long you've been doing this here. Would you advise other people to get in this field? We're going to talk about this today.
Yeah. Was it 30 years or 30 days?
I don't know. It all blurs together.
Right. It feels sometimes it's just one big long day, right? And so the question really is, and the topic of the show is, should I invest in real estate, whether that's commercial, whether that's residential, whether that's multifamily, or should I just do something else with my money? And is it really a good play at the end of the day? I think that's really the question. If I was doing it all over again, would I do it the way I did it now? And how does that go?
For example, I mean, there are lots of careers that 20, 30 years ago, you could be a travel agent. I don't think anybody would say, gee, be a travel agent today here. The world changed, the technology changed, or a banker, banks consolidate and stuff here. Once upon a time, these were good fields, these were good industries to be in, and there were ways that people built legacy wealth here in Southern California in the same way that the oil built fortunes and wealth in Texas and other places here. Is real estate still, with the high cost and the high regulations and the uncertain economic times, is real estate still the place to put your money these days to maximize your return? You think so? You're fully invested in this thing. That's you. I mean, you got some stocks, but
look, the simple answer is yes. So that's why people do it, and that's why it's a thing, and that's why we're here. But the question then really becomes, as you start to drill down into it, is if I was going to buy a piece of real estate or invest in a piece of real estate, what is that? And what does that look like? Is that an apartment building? Is that a shopping center? Is that a Starbucks or a Walgreens?
Or a medical office complex or some little unique niche.
Right. Like, well, what do I do and where do I put my money? And what's interesting is you have to rewind and say, okay, so what are other good professions other than saying I'm in real estate, right? When you say I'm in real estate, being a real estate broker, which was a thing in the 80s, and it was people were making a lot of money and people were well respected for it, and a
the
lot
crazy
of people were
days, you'd do a deal and you'd get a Porsche or something, you'd get a watch. I mean, there was this high flying, fast growth feeling, and whoever could get the deal first, and the next deal was always bigger than the last deal. And
and those days are gone. It's unfortunate. The shrimp and lobster buffets of the 80s. I miss those parties. But the question really is if I was a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, or I work for a tech company where I was able to get some wealth through stock or upside, what do I then do with the money that I've made? So first thing is, look, people buy a house for themselves, right? So you want a roof over your head, and that's the most logical place to invest the money. And then the issue is...
And the toys that you wanted, the car, the boat, the plane, whatever it is, something.
Okay, but once I've got that, or in lieu of that, which is a declining asset, if I want to put my money into real estate, old school would tell you, hey, if I bought a rental property, I would get positive cash flow from the rental property. So if my
for life,
well, if my mortgage and my taxes and my insurance added up to $2,000 a month, and I could get $3,000 a month, then I would be making money, right? And so the question becomes, does that dog still hunt?
Right.
In today's environment, it becomes very difficult with higher interest rates, very difficult with higher cost of purchasing a property.
Right. And insurance and operations.
And insurance and maintenance and, all those things. And so now the issue is, do I buy a piece of property and then I either make no money from it, or I lose a little bit of money, but then someday it's worth hopefully a bunch more money. And so I think the best example of that is you look at very wealthy people or movie stars or athletes, and as much as that's a very small percentage of the population, you hear about it,
Right.
and you read about it online. Oh, Tom Brady bought a house for $20 million, and then 2 years later he sold it for $40 million. Why? What did he do to increase the value of that home? Because he lived there, because he say it was Tom Brady's
Did
house?
make it bigger.
Did he renovate it and
yeah.
he spent $1 million. He didn't spend $20 million.
Right.
Did that neighborhood just double in value? And the answer is no, right? Because he sold it to somebody else who didn't care about the price. That is not the normal person. Right. The normal person doesn't buy a home for $200,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, and then 2 years later they sell it for $2 million and didn't do anything to improve the value of it.
Although we had that brief period of the flippers, the age of the flippers, where you just sat
But
on
the
it for a
flipper would
while.
improve it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, or I guess in some instances they would slap
Just
a coat of
hold
paint on it and
Right.
then and turn out. But those days are over, right? So you have to look at it, and we've had time and time again, we've had guests on the show that say, look, if you buy something and you hold it long enough, you will make good money on
Right.
it. So if you're looking at buying
And
it,
can I stop you? Is that a truism just forever?
it
Is that
is.
just okay?
It is. I mean,
It's what the great Will Rogers, the satirist of the 1920s, said real estate's worth so much because God ain't making that anymore. It's a limited supply.
But also you have just the value of the dollar, and then you have improvement of the area around you. So
Growth of the population.
Yeah, I mean, look, even in places like Michigan and Kansas, you theoretically would buy something and it should be worth more later on. You don't get the upside you would get in a New York or a California by buying something, and then it exponentially increases, which is why people who are in it for the long haul and people who are buying in their backyard seem to be okay to buy something and just frankly overpay or pay the price and then just sit on it.
But let me just challenge that for 1 second. So I'm a historian by nature. I was a history major in college. You go back to the 1800s, the early 1900s, the accumulation of property wasn't foregone. It wasn't even the purpose. You wanted to pay off your house so you could give it to your kids. It was a legacy, and they would live in the house. Generations would live on the farm. Generations would live in the house.
That's also gone, because now you're not even sure your kids are going to live in the same state as you.
Exactly. So the purpose wasn't to necessarily make money in your house. It was to have a safe place, to reduce your costs, and then to leave that to future generations who maybe couldn't afford a house. Houses got more expensive. Farm got more expensive. It was a legacy thing that you left and built. That seems to be not in anybody's consideration.
No, and the issue of I want to buy not so much the house is the land.
Yeah.
Right. So you got land, and in certain parts of the country, land is very cheap, and there's an abundance of it.
Right.
So the likelihood that the land itself goes up in value, if there's plenty of land around, not so much. In areas on both coasts of the country where land is not as readily available, and they only make so much of it close to the beach or close to the ocean, then you're buying at a premium, and you're hoping that it goes up to even more of a premium.
And the other purpose of investing wasn't always just to make a high return on it. You want to make some money, was to also preserve a certain lifestyle. I see the uber wealthy, the Bill Gates and a million other people like him investing in farmland. I'm always saying, farmland. They're buying up huge acres of the middle parts of the country. Isn't Bill Gates one of the largest property owners in the world?
But I don't think he's buying it to farm it. I think he's buying it because he's got a bunch of dough, and he just wants to preserve it.
Yeah. It's this idea of, I'm going to keep this in place, and I'm going to maybe recreate. Jeff Bezos has some big ranches because he grew up in a ranch in New Mexico or something. And so you go back to your youth and you recreate this, and you're going to preserve it as it's the Yellowstone TV show. I'm going to hold on to this. We're never going to develop this.
Yeah, but I want to dial it back to the average person, because Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos are
Well,
the average person, they buy a house, and then they want to buy a second house, or they want to buy a rental house, or they want to buy a rental condo.
That's been the norm,
and maybe I'll buy a condo in a vacation area, whether that's a ski resort or Florida or someplace where it's warm, or Mexico, and then I'll rent it out and I'll offset my expenses.
That's
and
me.
Then,
I've got a second
one
home
day
and I rent it out.
maybe I'll retire there one day, right? So those all make perfect sense. And then the issue is, look, if I was going to buy it and I'm ultimately going to use it or leave it to my kids or both, then I don't have to have the best deal around, and I don't have to make a bunch of money. The person who's looking at investing in real estate and getting a return on their money versus getting a return someplace else, has a different analogy, right? The person who's buying in real estate for the long-term play, is it a good time to buy? It's always a good time to buy,
Right.
right? Is it okay if I don't make a little bit of money on the front end? Yeah, because I'm not flipping it and I'm not selling it, so
And
I'm
maybe I
okay.
just want to own this. It's a marquee property.
Yeah.
I just want to. I think there's value. It's never
Sure,
going to
I
go
wanted
down.
a home in Scottsdale, Arizona, and so I bought one, right? I mean,
Right.
I've always wanted it. And so that's different. Then the issue is there's the guy who says, I have X dollars and I want to invest it. Do I buy a condo and rent it out? Do I buy a medical condo? Do I buy a small office building? Do I buy a strip center? Do I buy a Starbucks, right? And so what are the returns on those? And then you have to ask yourself, okay, and so if I'm comparing returns, and and so those properties are based on the income it generates, not on the intrinsic value of what a house might sell for or what somebody would
Exactly.
pay.
Someday, right.
So while those might go up in value intrinsically a little bit, if a property throws off $10,000 a month, and then 10 years from now it throws off the same $10,000 a month, theoretically it's not worth any more than what you paid for it. In fact, it should be worth less because it's older.
Right.
So you have to look at the investment side of it and say to yourself, what kind of a return am I getting? And what is the cap rate of the investment? What is the percentage return? And then compare that to just leaving it in the bank, buying bonds, buying T-bills, putting it in the stock market, or a little bit of the above. Now, the average person maybe doesn't have the luxury of having some money in the stock market and some money in real estate and some money in bonds. And so you have to pick. And so
Right.
now you're left with, okay, if I put it in bonds, it's safe, I get a lower return, and it's never going to be worth really substantially more than what I paid for it. So that's the safe play,
Right.
right? Versus the person says, I want more. And so I buy something in real estate and I invest in it, and hopefully it makes sense. And I think you have a certain amount of people out there, the mom and pop folks that say, hey, I could do this. Right, and some of them can't and don't know what they're doing, but some of them do it.
And you've been honest. You started as a mom and pop. You were a broker, and you started saying, "Hey, why don't I buy one?" You bought a fourplex or something, or a duplex or something.
Well, I bought it for the cash flow. So back in the day, I wanted cash flow. If it didn't cash flow, I didn't want to buy it. Right, because as much as I figured, okay, eventually it'll be worth more, I was not thinking retirement. I needed cash flow.
Right.
Right, and so my alternative
And was the cash to build up a revenue stream, or was it to make cash you can get? Because the old days you got a duplex so you could get a fourplex so you could get it. You traded up. Now it seems to be I'm trying to accumulate numbers of them.
I think it depends on what you're talking about and who you are. Look, for me, I was in a business that had very big ebbs and flows of cash flow. As a real estate broker, if you make a deal, you make a bunch of money. You don't make a deal, you don't make any money.
Right.
And that's very hard to pay your bills. Right. It's also makes it very difficult in today's
To
world
predict.
to break into the real estate brokerage market, because that's why people have a difficult time, is unless you have family or you have a spouse or somebody that's going to stake you, or you have some other source of income to pay your bills. You can't pay your bills.
Right.
You go a couple of months and you go dry. It's a problem. I mean,
Or 6 months or 8 months or
Hey,
something.
I was there. I mean, I was down to, a couple $100 in the bank, and I was washing my own car because I couldn't afford to go to the car wash. I was ironing my own shirts because I couldn't afford a couple of bucks to go to the dry
And when
cleaner.
you started, they didn't pay you a salary or anything, right?
No,
It was all
no.
just
So if you run out of money, you had to make a deal before you ran out of money, and so I know what that feeling is like. It's horrible, and so I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But the truth of it is, unless you're willing to take that risk, which most people are not, right? And we've hired people over the years, and I said, look, I'll give you a bigger percentage split with no draw or no base, or you can take the lower split with the base. And most people are like, oh, I got to pay my bills.
Yeah,
So they take
right.
the lower, scenario, which the guy who's confident in himself would say, I want the bigger split. And it's the right move if you're successful, but you can't do it if you got to pay your bills.
So you've got a son. Others out there in your business have got second. I don't see a lot of second and third generation entering the brokerage.
There's a bunch.
business.
I mean, look, it's much easier for your son or your daughter to get into the business if you already can teach them all the bad things that happen to you
Clearly.
not to do, and then also to give them a book of business and pass on the relationships that you already have, and then also have them learn by experience in helping you and taking the burden off. And so you do see a lot of that in the commercial real estate brokerage business, where people come in and it's an easy transition for
Because they know
somebody to
somebody,
make.
then they get in and they
Yeah,
can teach them
no
the
question.
ropes.
You get on a team and you have a mentor and you have a safety net and you have experience all roped into one. But for the average person, if we go back to buying a piece of real estate, you don't know what you're doing, right? You're just like, hey, yeah, I could do this, right? And I talk to people at dinner parties all the time. I have a rental property. I don't have any kinds of problems that you have, Barry. I don't have anybody suing me. I don't have anybody stiffing me. I'm like, well, good for you, right? But you have one, right? And so
I got one.
right. And then the problem is if you get stiffed or you have a problem or something breaks or, the place burns down, you that's 100% of your portfolio.
Yeah.
And so whatever you're buying, you got to make sure that it's the right thing and that it's not a money pit and you're not going to throw stuff
And so
into it. And so that's why people don't raise the rent a bunch, because they want, if you get a good tenant, they figure, look, I'll keep them, and then it makes sense.
When I grew up in the Midwest, as you did, I didn't know a lot of people that did real estate, that made money off of real estate. They might have some real estate, but they made money off of creating companies, or they made money off of stocks and 401ks and other things that they accumulated. Here, and since I moved to Southern California in the 80s, it's particularly Orange County. This is where most people, if you've made money, most of them have made it in real estate. And yet, giant company, we're here at UCI's Applied Innovation Center, people coming up with $100 million companies, unicorns, potentially billion-dollar companies here in high tech. But I don't see an investment rush from people who have capital to play that risk. They'd much rather stick with what they know, which is real estate.
But also, look, if you're a younger person and you want to invent something and be the next whoever, then I look to invent the next thing, and then that's my hit. But if you look at people that have been successful, at the end of the day, there's some real estate component investment to diversify what they're doing.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if you look at folks in the Midwest, where do they ultimately want to retire? And they want to retire to a warm weather climate.
Florida,
Arizona, Nevada,
right.
California.
Right.
And so in that scenario, you would buy something, and then you keep the house that you had, because the house that you had is probably not worth that much more than what you paid for.
I guess I wonder, if I came back in 50 years, would most of the wealth be putting into most of their eggs into the real estate basket? Will that be where the wealth is being accumulated still in Southern California? Or we kind of reached a peak? It's harder to make that kind of return. They'd rather do startups, or they'd rather do high tech, or they'd rather do
that'd be a good question,
something else
to come back and see. But the average investor, if you're looking for a cash flow return, now your dilemma is, what do I do? So I could buy a triple net property, where those were big in years past, where I would buy a Starbucks, I would buy a Walgreens, I would buy a Rite Aid, which
a lot of
doesn't
people,
exist
little
anymore.
mom and pop shopping centers, right?
Sure, but a 99-cent store also doesn't exist, right? So some of these things went under, but also
because you had a credit tenant, and you had
but that dynamic played well when I could get a 4% interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
I could buy at a 7 cap or 7% return. I could leverage and get a loan for 50%, where then my return would be close to 9%. And then if I'm getting 2 or 3% in the bank, 9% is much better. So somebody who's trying to take the money, the nest egg that they've built, and get cash flow for retirement so that they can pay their bills,
right.
That dynamic makes perfect sense, which is why you saw people getting out of fourplexes and those kinds of things, and just getting into a triple net property, which didn't have the maintenance. The problem in today's world is the interest rates are 6%. And the cap rate is 5%.
I still don't understand how that works.
I don't either. And so that dog doesn't hunt, right? If I buy an apartment building and the interest rate is, today's world, 5.75, 6%, and the cap rate is 4%, right? The logic of, well, you can just kick all the tenants out and raise the rent and get the return up, that you can't do that anymore.
Right.
And then secondly, the logic of, well, here's the expenses on the property, but then my expenses as the buyer are not the same as the guy who's selling it to me, because his insurance is not the same as mine, and his landscaping costs are not the same as mine. And
taxes.
Taxes. So also doesn't hunt. Right.
So
So from a pure cash flow, well, it's why you see transaction volume down, because on a pure cash flow basis, it doesn't hunt.
So they're all basing on future value.
Or I sold something else for a stupid number,
And I have to
I have to exchange into something else.
Talked a lot about that.
Or since I sold my duplex for more money than I could dream of, which was kind of a dumb number, I'm okay to buy somebody else's fourplex for that equivalent dumb number because I don't want to pay the taxes. And now my motivation is not the cash flow. My motivation is not paying the taxes and or trading into something bigger. So you have that, but also that has slowed down with the higher interest rates. And then the issue is when we talk to clients, they're like, well, I want to sell mine for a lot, and then I want you to find me a deal on somebody else's
Yeah, right.
And so I talked to
Make a lot, pay a
I
little.
talked to my son about it. It's like an age-old philosophy of sell high and buy low.
Right.
Okay, great. And then if I found that deal for you, I'd probably just buy it myself, and you'd never see it, or there'd be 10 other people hovering around it. And so while it is a relative term, you cannot sell your property at a 4 cap and buy someone else's at an 8 cap down the street.
Just because you're a genius.
You got to go to Tennessee or Louisiana to go get that, and then it can be done, which is why you see a lot of people getting out of California.
So a lot. Define that. It feels like people are talking about it. Is it really a lot? Is it a flow of money leaving the state and going to these other places because it's simpler and cheaper and less regulation?
Well, you see outflows of monies going to other places, not only because it's cheaper, the money is not cheaper, but the return is better, and the governmental regulations are less. The ease of doing business in another state that might be more friendly is better, and then the tax consequences are better. And so people are looking for new opportunities. And if you said, hey, I'm going to buy in California and get a negative return, or I'm going to buy in Tennessee and I'm going to get a 7% return, you pick it. I mean, which one do you want?
And the only reason they don't go there is because it's far away and hard to manage and might not understand the market.
But you can hire a local management company. Or you can buy something that requires minimal management, at least so you think, and then you're still getting the return. And then you get out. Then when they tell you that your insurance quadruples because of fires in California, that's not going to happen in
Michigan,
Tennessee or
Tennessee,
Michigan or
right.
something like that. So and then what it does do is you have people from places like New York and California where real estate's very expensive that go looking for other places like a Colorado, like in Arizona, and then they buy stuff because they think it's cheap.
Right.
And then, so like my friend who lived in the Beverly Hills for a long, long time, and he sold his house and he moved to the Palm Springs area. And he was like, I bought a bigger house than I had in Los Angeles for a fraction of the price. I joined 2 country clubs, and it's less than the 1 country club I was joining in
Why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah, and nobody charged me $25 to valet park my car, and so he was like loving it, right? It's relative. It's a relative term.
That's it. I saw it years ago. When I first came here, there was a flood of Californians leaving when property first shot up. There was a couple of waves where things doubled or tripled, and people are like, "Oh my God, I bought this for $50,000 this house. Now it's worth like $200,000. I'm cashing in. I'm going to pick it. Idaho, Washington, Nevada,
Same.
someplace here, neighboring state,
All the Montana, Idaho,
And
all these states
they
really
were
saw
flooding.
booms.
Yeah, they saw booms because people took money.
And look, if you're looking at, if you sold a house for, pick a number, right? You sold a house in Southern California for $2 million, and then you go to Idaho and you're going to buy a house for $500,000.
Michigan, yeah.
Right. If you had to pay an extra $10,000 or $20,000 above the asking price, do you really care?
Mm-hmm.
And then the guy who's in Michigan who lives there goes, "Why would somebody do that?"
This is
Right? That is
crazy.
just a dumb dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Normal negotiating would tell you if I'm asking $500,000, I would offer you $480,
Yeah.
right, or $470,
Some discount.
and we'd settle on somewhere in the middle. Whereas somebody else who goes, "Yeah, I like it. I'll give you $520." Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I bought my office. My first office building was they had a auction from the bank, right? and they everybody put in an offer, and everybody put in below what their suggested price was, and then the bank got like 20 offers. And then they went back to everybody and said, "You know what? We got 20 offers. We're not going to give you a price. We're just going to come back to you and allow you to either stick with the price you offered us, or you can up your price.
Make a better deal."
And then we're just going to pick whatever the best deal is at the end of the day. So you have 24 hours. Go ahead and tell us what you want to do. Stick with it or make up a new number." So I'm like, I want it. And I made up a new number, and I paid like $20,000 over what the suggested price was. I assumed everybody at the time was offering less than the suggested price.
Right.
Right. And I got it. And I got to tell you, I've made millions, right? I mean, for $20,000, right? But at the time, it seemed like stupid. Like, why would anybody do that?
Right.
So,
and others didn't. 19 other people didn't.
but that's how when you go back that's how you have a run up in the market, whether it's in Idaho, whether it's in Southern California, somebody just says, look, I don't care. I'll just pay you more. And then the neighbor goes to sell their property. And then they go, well, the last guy got more than he was asking. So that's what I want.
Right. So I hear three things that can artificially juice the market. One is these 1031 exchanges. I bought a house or bought a property. It's gone up tremendously in value. And now I want to sell it. If I do, there's a huge capital gains tax I got to pay on this thing. So if I roll it over to another property, I can avoid that. So I'll pay more for the next property to avoid the taxes. That still seems to be a force happening. The other is the funny money from overseas.
Yes.
I don't care what. I just got to park this money before I get seized by the other country here.
So you have 1031 exchange money, which I'm going to call it I don't care because I don't want to pay the taxes.
Right.
You have foreign money, which is I don't care, I just need to get it out of wherever I was trying to get it out of.
Right.
And then you have the guy who, however he sold his property, he got a stupid number, so he's okay to pay your stupid number.
And probably in another state, another location. He's
whatever it is,
with,
right?
My property was worth here, and over there I'll roll it into something else.
Yes. And then on top of that, you have the real estate broker who's trying to get the listing, who just tells you whatever it is
whatever
that
you want to hear.
So you think your house is worth X? I'll get you even more than X. Just give me the listing, right? And then in 3 or 4 months, when I can't sell it, I'll come back and go, it wasn't me, it was the market. But I got the listing, and now hopefully we're buddies, and I took you to dinner, or you feel like I'm doing a good job. So you have brokers running up the market, right? And using what I'll call selective comps to be able to justify a number that is higher to make you feel like I could get you that, and then whether I can or not, I guess remains to be seen. And you have these other factors. And so the person who's sitting on the sidelines going, I just like to make a fair deal, or we have clients that say, I want a deal. Right, good for you. We have clients that have been looking for like 6 years, right, that never bought anything because
they want a deal.
They only want a deal. And as a real estate broker, you need a new client, right? Because I'm not going to make any money from you, and I could show you 100 deals, and then you might make one, but I'd rather just go work with somebody else who's a little more realistic. Right? You seem like a nice person, but I'm moving on.
Because the deal guy doesn't have to do it. The other people you want to be. Somebody moved.
There's motivation, right? There's
a divorce,
a sense of urgency, right? So
it.
That's what you have to look for. But you have all these things that push the market, right? The difference is, in a declining market, it's if stuff doesn't sell, then you get people that feel desperate. And I don't feel in this market that you feel that people are desperate. I feel like the only events where people are desperate is divorce, or somebody died and siblings are fighting over it. And so those people are not selling fire sale, but they are motivated.
And everybody seems to want to just hold on. If it's not now, then I'll just hold it.
Well, if the person doesn't need to make a deal, and then they say, hey, look, if I can't get what I want, I'll just wait. Or if the person who's selling it says, look, if I can't get my number, I'll just keep it.
I'm still living in my house. I didn't think I'd still be living in it, whatever we've now 20, going on 30 years or something. I thought by now it'd be gone. I'd be moved up or moved out or somewhere. But I don't want to move, and where am I going to move? And it's expensive to move, and I like my house, so I just fix it up and stay where I'm at.
Right. And so then you had, when construction costs were much less, people renovating bathrooms and kitchens and living rooms and things like that.
Right.
But that also has slowed because the cost of it is very expensive. And for a while, you had trouble getting labor to actually do the work. So what you wound up having people do is they just go, I just not going to do anything. I'm just going to go take a trip and spend the money elsewhere.
So the purpose of the show is real estate investing today as opposed to yesterday. Lots of things have changed, and yet the fundamental value of real estate investing, you think, is still sound. If you buy it today, hold it long enough, it's going to go up.
Yes.
And the question is then, is that your motivation, or do you want to get cash flow out of it? That's harder than ever.
Yes. And if you're buying for cash flow, you better be comfortable with the cash flow that you're going to get, because the odds that the cash flow jumps, unless you're doing something different with the property, versus the odds that your operating expenses go up and your cash flow gets pinched, are much greater in today's world. Versus if I'm just buying an asset because I want to do the Tom Brady thing and I want to buy it for $20 million, and then one day I think it'll be worth 40, then none of that really matters.
So if you were advising your son or young people today entering the field, where's the hidden opportunity? What should they be looking at? Is it commercial real estate? And if so, where? Is it housing? Is it apartments? Is it buying raw land again here and sitting on it? Is it unique things, medical offices?
Yeah, look, well, that's why we have people in here every week. I mean, there are niches in various different segments of real estate, and people make money from all of those niches.
Right.
I don't know that there's one where it says this is the one and everything else is sort of down the road. But I think you got to look at it. If you're getting into the business, you got to get on a path where you become knowledgeable in some sector of the market, and where you can make relationships, and where you can be surrounded by somebody who will help teach you what mistakes not to make, and expose you to transactions and information so that you can become more intelligent.
And
but it's unfortunate because in the 80s, it really was a lot of get rich quick things.
Right.
And I don't feel
Everything's
like,
going. You just get in.
right.
And
I mean, I know
everybody's a
plenty of
genius.
people that said, "Oh, I'm getting into residential real estate," and then 6 months or a year later, I've been sitting at open houses. I didn't make any money, and
Right.
that's not going to get it done.
Are there contrarians entering the market now that say if offices are down, I'm going to buy them? We talked about it in a previous show where the Irvine Company, the class act of Southern California, decided to disinvest in downtown real estate in downtown San Diego. Shocking.
Yeah.
A growing city, major market. They had marquee properties, and they decided now's the time to dump them. You got to wonder who bought them. Yeah, they felt good because they got a deal, but how are they going to do better than the Irvine Company? Are there contrarians?
Right, you have other people that it's value add, whether it's somebody buys a shopping center and knocks it down and builds apartments, somebody buys
Right.
an office building with a large parking lot, and then they're able to put other things on that site that weren't there before.
Housing or
The
something.
difference is in landlocked places like Southern California, you have to take down something to build something
Right.
new
Can't
because you
just
don't
grow
have
out.
a lot of land. If you go to Texas or you go to Tennessee,
As far as you can see.
there's no reason for you to knock down something old because you just buy some other land, right? And
Right.
then I'll just build over there. So it's really back to, look, is it cash flow that you're looking for? Is it appreciation? Is it both? Is it I don't care about the cash flow and I'm just going to hold it? And then that's going to drive what you're.
Or is it some other emotion? Legacy, I want to own this, prestige, something here.
Yeah, and I also think that the barrier to entry in today's world is much more difficult than it was in the past, partly because of the financing. When I first started buying properties, they had a thing called an 80-10-10, which is you could buy an 80% first trust deed, so you get 80% loan, and you had to come up with 20%. But then you could go get a second trust deed for 10%, which means that you only had to come up with 10%. And so coming up with 10% versus in today's world, if you wanted to go buy a fourplex, you got to come up with like somewhere between 30 and 40 or 50% even.
Wow.
Because it doesn't really
And the
pencil.
price went up, and the amount that you got to put down went up.
So if you're looking at $1 million property and you had to come up with $100,000 back in the day versus $1 million property today and you got to come up with $400,000, it's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I guess that's the last question. The future of real estate, has it priced out the mom and pop? In fact, has at one time, everybody I knew had some little piece of property. The more successful ones had a little mom and pop shopping center or a fourplex or something. Everybody had something. I don't see a lot of the ordinary people making that play because they can't.
Yeah, you also look, if you're going back old school, there weren't these kinds of success stories of a Microsoft or a Facebook or a Tesla or
never.
a Nvidia. Then you bought Coke and Pepsi and you bought stable stuff that would just go up a little bit over time.
Right.
But if the alternative is that I could buy Nvidia and I could get a 3,000% return, or I could buy Bitcoin and just make a ton of money or lose a ton of money,
Right.
Then some people do that, and then that's a higher risk, but certainly a greater return. So you have to look at it and say, hey, is real estate my thing? And if it is, what kind of real estate? And then am I buying cash flow or am I buying appreciation and long-term hold? And those are things that people have to make a decision on.
Well, you're in it. I don't see you selling and saying I'm going to go all in.
I don't know. There's more. This morning I'd like to sell.
We're making a
There's
deal.
buyers out there.
There's a
calling
deal
me.
today here.
But the fact of the matter is that it's not for faint of heart, and it's not for everybody. And there's plenty of people out there that make money and do it, and there are a lot of pitfalls and a lot of frustrations. And if it was easy, everybody would do it.
That's
So,
the truth.
on that final note, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company. Hopefully you take a little something away today and you can use it in whatever it is that you're trying to do. And if nothing else, you can throw it out at the dinner table and make some conversation. But Paul, always good to talk to you.
Fascinating.
We will be back here next week on Let's Talk Real Estate. Thanks again for tuning in.
Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live.